Hello, folks. Piney Woods Prepper here. I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking about comms for the prepper. When things go south, we as preppers usually want some way to communicate with others. There are several options at our disposal, and we'll briefly consider some of the more common ones. The first one we'll consider is the Family Radio Service, or FRS. Basically, they're the little walkie-talkies that you can buy at Walmart. They require no license. You just buy one and take it home and start talking. The downside is that they only run a couple of watts of power and they're only good for short distances as the result. Secondly, there's the GMRS, or General Mobile Radio Service. They too usually come in the form of a walkie-talkie, but a mobile unit that's usually mounted in a vehicle is also available. Now, GMRS does require a license to operate, but no testing is involved. And third is the multi-use radio service, or MURS. This service is typically used in business for dispatching drivers or to conduct some other type of business. This service also requires a license to operate, but again, no testing is involved. The downside of this service is that you're assigned a specific channel that you must use. Then we have CB radio. Its frequency range is divided into 40 channels, and again, no license is required. The radios are available in walkie-talkies, mobile rigs, and base stations. And lastly, we have ham radio. Ham radio is used worldwide, and it does require a license to operate, as well as a written multiple choice test covering rules and regulations and general radio theory. They're also available in walkie-talkies, mobile units, and fixed stations. So, which one is best for the prepper? Honestly, there's no clear-cut choice, but it really depends on what you would intend to do with it. In my opinion, ham radio is far and away the obvious choice, and I'll explain my thinking. First, the other services we mentioned are limited to only a few watts of power, while ham radio offers up to 2,000 watts of output power, and that offers a much more reliable signal. But I believe the real advantage is that you have the option to use a number of frequency bands as opposed to the one allowed by the other services. That equates to the ability to reach different distances with the various bands available. Of course, the downside is the added time and energy to study for the test and the cash outlay for a rig, as opposed to the cheaper walkie-talkies used by other services. But most off-the-shelf hand rigs will transmit 100 watts. Now, that said, there are inexpensive walkie-talkies available for some parts of the ham bands. However, it's been my experience that they are a bear to get programmed correctly. Now, I will say this, while I hear a lot of folks recommended the small walkie-talkies using a ham radio, that you're really not much better off than if you use one of the other services. The range will be line of sight, just like those services due to using the UHF and VHF frequencies, unless you happen to be in range of a repeater, which is beyond the scope of this discussion. I highly recommend HF, high frequency rig. They are the ones with the option of using multiple frequency bands, and you can change bands with the flick of a switch. But one advantage of an HF rig is that you can listen to others on the next block or on the other side of the world or anywhere in between. So you can get news of what's happening in other areas as well. I also hear others say you're allowed to transmit on ham radio without a license in an emergency. And while that's true, it's far better to be able to use your ham radio when you're not under emergency conditions, because there's a learning curve to using one of those rigs. And the last thing you want to be doing is learning in time of an emergency. But if you're dead set against ham radio, the next best option, in my opinion, is CB. More folks have CB radios, and a mobile unit shouldn't be difficult to locate for sale relatively cheap. But here's the deal though. One of those mobile units runs off of a car battery. So if the grid goes down, you could still be able to communicate. I have a small solar-powered trickle charger that I use for my lawn equipment, but one of those should provide plenty of power to operate a mobile unit. Of course, that's true for any mobile rig, be it CB, ham, or other service. But I'd offer this advice. Virtually every new radio you can buy today is solid state. I suggest finding an older tube type radio. You can find them on eBay or other places. And the reason I say that is a tube type rig is much less expensive than a newer rig. And besides, they're also much more forgiving of antenna issues. And speaking of antennas, you can easily build an HF antenna using some wire strung between two trees or other objects. A quick search of the internet will provide you with the length of wire needed and a couple of other parts for your desired frequency band. I've worked the world with one of those antennas. In fact, I have a wire antenna here. This particular antenna is a commercially available antenna. It's called a G5RV, if you're interested. But the good thing about this antenna is it is good for up to from 80 watts, 80 meters, which is a pretty long wavelength, all the way down to 10 meters, which is the shortest of the HF wavelengths. And again, you hook a coax cable up to it and stick it up in the tree, and you're good to go. Like I say, I've worked the world with one of those particular antennas. Now, I could go on and on about the advantage of ham radio, but for the sake of time, I'll stop here. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you would hit that like button, and if you hadn't already, hit subscribe to be notified when I put up other videos. So this is the Piney Woods Prepper saying God bless and be safe out there.